Hi everyone, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our literal equations poster. I'm going to show you these two pages, so if you need to come back in the video to look at what formulas are used for your name, I'm going to have them right here. So if you need the first page, go ahead and pause it right here so you can look up these formulas. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and scroll on to the second page, because remember there are 44 formulas that we could look at, all right? And if you need to get a hold of me, don't forget to message me on Remind. These are the rest of them. So if you need this, you can pause the video here and look at these formulas. All right, so on tonight's project, you guys have been assigned to do the vowels, A, E, I, O, U, okay? So, but keep in mind that we already picked them for some of them. So I said, if you had an A in class, we said you guys could use number 14. That's what I'm going to be doing on this video. If I said if you had an E, you could use number 43. That's what I'm going to be using on this video. I'm also going to be using number 17, 20, and 33. So first off, what we did in class today is we listed our letters so that we could see them, okay, how our name is spelled. And you need to have 8 letters, whichever order you do them in, part of your first name, part of your last name, but you need to have 8 letters, okay? So I'm looking for the first equation, which is going to be an S. Well, that's not a vowel. So in class, what I had you guys do is go through all the equations and highlight or identify the ones with an S. So when you looked at it, any ones that have an S, we considered. Number 15 has an S. I could use that one. Okay. I also looked at 21, but I can't use 21 because S is already by itself. I don't want S to be by itself, okay? That would kind of defeat the purpose of practice. All right, I'm going to go on to the second page. Number 27 has an S. Number 31 has an S, but it's already solved for it, so I'm not going to use that one. Number 33 has an S. 34 is solved for, 35, 36, 37. None of those work for me, and number 43 does not work for me. So my options are equations 27, 33, and 15. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to use equation 27. So I'm going to say I'm going to use equation 27, okay? Now, for K, I would do the same thing. I'd go through and look. And well, when I'm looking at K, 22 doesn't work because K is already by itself. And I believe there's only one equation with K, or maybe there's 2. There is number 25 that has a K with it. And number 42 has a K with it. So out of those two, I could choose one, and I'm going to go ahead and choose number 42. I can hear it already. Of course, I chose the most difficult one. I did. I chose the one with more of a challenge so that I can actually practice. Okay. So this one here for K is number 42. Now in class, we said if you have an E in your name, go ahead and use equation number 43. But notice that I have 2 E's in my name. That means I cannot use 43 again here to solve for E, okay? But equation 43 has an S, an E, and a Z. If I had a Z in my name, I could use it again, okay? But I'm gonna try to find something else with an E in it. Let's see if we can find another equation with an E. Again, E cannot be the very beginning, so it cannot be that one. Can't be 17. It cannot be 29. But it can't, not 39, but it can be 43 or 44. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go with 44. Since I've already used 43, I'm going to say I would use 44. Okay, so you would pick an equation for every letter, every 8 letters that you have in your name, okay? Once you have those 8, then you would go over to our worksheet is where I'm about to go. And I've already got it filled out with which equations I'm using for A, E, I, O, U. Your job tonight is to complete these vowels that are in your name on the worksheet. And if they're not in your name, then you're to complete them in your spiral notebook so you have some examples in there as well. Okay? All right, so let's go over to that worksheet of the literal equations. I've already picked these same ones that we used in class. 14, 43, 17, 20, 33, and I've put down J on here on purpose, okay? So equation J, let me go back because that's kind of important. Equation J was equation 30, okay? This one here is the only one with a J in it, and it's, for me, unfortunate, for you, fortunate, that it's already solved for J. So I'm going to go back to the worksheet, and I'm going to look at the one that's J. So if you have a J in your name, this one's for you. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put, this was equation 40, I believe it was, J equals MHG. All right, so I'm supposed to be solving for J, but J's already by itself. So there is nothing for me to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a line over, and I have J equals MHG. Okay, that one's done. Freebie there if you have a J in your name. If you have an O in your name, it's the same thing. Number 20 was the only one with an O. Okay, so we're trying to use this 0 and imagine that it's an O. Even though it's not, it's really a 0. Same thing. Since there's no work that we can do on it, I give you a freebie on this one. You get to go ahead, go over, and just copy it down. Oh, however, I actually want it where your letter is first. So it would be 0, which is a pretend O, is equal to AX plus B. Okay, so I just flipped them and put them in the reverse order. All right, so let's get to some actual work here. Let's go to number 14. Okay, so number 14 is A. If you have an A on your name, stick with me on this one because you should have number 14 written down. We are going to solve this equation for A. Okay. Rewrite that equation where it says show your work, and that's where we're going to head. All right. Our goal is to get A by itself. All right, so I want to get that A by itself. In order to do that, currently A is with A squared. So I don't want to do anything with that square just yet. I want to get rid of everything outside that box. All right, so let me go ahead and draw my line here to show me that I'm going to be equal to both sides. Okay, so then I'm going to do the inverse operation. Remember we talked about those inverse operations in class. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract b squared. I don't need any piece of b squared. So I'm going to subtract the entire term. But whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Okay. Now looking at this, I still have a squared, b squared minus b squared, those there cancel out, is equal to b squared and c squared. We cannot combine them because they have a different variable, a different unknown. Okay? So it's negative b squared plus c squared. You could also do c squared minus b squared. In that order, as long as you keep the sign with the correct variable, that is still valid. All right, now we talked about the inverse of a square is a square root. Okay. So to get rid of that square, I'm going to square root the left side. But if I square root the left side, I have to square root the right side. Okay. Now, if you remember me talking about this in class, I said it's not going to cancel out on the right side because I'm really not trying to cancel it. I'm just trying to undo what's happening to the A. So if I'm trying to undo a square, that's the square root. So I need to have that square root still on the right side, okay? So that square root still needs to be there. So my answer at that point, because the square and the square root cancel out, I've got a is equal to the square root of the negative b squared plus c squared. Okay. So in the long run, when I'm looking at the formula we started with and the formula that we currently have, I want to see if I have all the same pieces. Okay, so let me get a green highlighter. So originally I had an A. I still have an A. Okay. A was squared. It's no longer squared because now it was square rooted. So that's just that inverse operation. Okay. I originally had a positive b squared. The inverse is negative b squared. I originally had c squared, and that c squared is still there. So I still have all those pieces. Even though some of them look like the opposite, they are, because they're the inverse on the opposite side of the equal sign. But all my variables are still there, and my values are still there, like the square root or a square, they're still there, okay? So my solution would be A is equal to the square root of negative b plus, negative b squared plus c squared all underneath the radical, okay? All right, so now let's go solve E, all right? So now if you have an E in your name, you're working on this in the worksheet. If not, you're writing E in your workbook, okay? All right, so trying to get E by itself. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of that z in the denominator. This is one of those that we talked about. When we want to get rid of the denominator, we're going to multiply it. We're going to multiply both sides by what is in the denominator, okay? But I'm trying to get to the e squared, so I don't need that z. So I'm going to multiply the left side by z. I multiplied the right side by z. You can put this as z over 1 if that helps. All right, and if it also helps, which I said I was going to do, draw down our line showing that we have an equation on both sides. On the left side, we are left with s times z is equal to, and on the right side, a z and a z cancel or reduce to 1. Sorry, they don't cancel out. They reduce to 1. And I'm left with e squared on the right side. Okay. Now we have to get rid of that square. So in order to get rid of the square, we have to do the inverse of the operation. The inverse of a square is to square root it. But whatever I do to one side, we have to do to the other. Okay. The square and the square root will eliminate one another because they are inverses. But on the left side, we have the square root of sz. And on the right side, we have e. So my final answer would be E is equal to the square root of s times z. So originally we had an E. We still have an E. Originally we had a Z. We still have the Z. We had an S. We still have an S. We had a square. Now we have the square root. And this is a tricky thing here. I'm going to try to see if I can catch this. Originally we had a division. We don't have a division anymore because now those two are being multiplied. So the inverse of that division was multiplication. So again, everything is still there. It's just reorganized and it appears differently. Okay. All right, so that's the A, that's the E. Let's get to work on the I. All right, now the I. Okay, so we're trying to solve for I. Now on this one, I need to get I by itself, so I'm going to go ahead and just put a box around it for a second to kind of show you what I'm looking for. What's happening between the I and the R is multiplication. So how do I get rid of that? Is I divide off what I don't need there. Okay, so I don't need the R, but whatever I do to one side, got to do to the other. Okay, so yes, we made a fraction. We weren't trying to get rid of a fraction on this case. There was no fraction to begin with. Okay, so then on this one here, the R divided by R reduces to 1. And we are left with E divided by R equals I. That one is done. That one is solved. So we have I is equal to E divided by R. Okay. All right, we talked about O. O is already done. There was nothing for us to do there. The last one is U. So if you have a U in your name, let's go. If you don't have a U in your name, you are putting this in your spiral. Okay. All right, so we are going to solve for U. All right. All right, so first I need to start off with that U term and know that I'm not going to touch it for just a second. I want to see what's happening to that term that I can get rid of. All right. Well, U squared is being added to 2AS. I don't need the 2AS at all, so I really have to get rid of all of it. So instead of adding 2AS, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2AS. Since it's all one term, I can subtract it all together. All right. Now, on the left side, they are not the same. They are not both V squared, or they don't both have an AS. So these two here can remain neighbors, but they cannot be combined. So I'm going to have V squared minus 2AS, or you could have negative 2AS plus V squared, because there really is a positive there, is equal to U squared. And 2AS minus 2AS, that cancels to 0. All right, now looking at this new piece that we have here, we've got to get rid of that square. So the inverse operation of a square, again, is a square root. Oh my, we keep doing that. But whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Okay. A square and a square root will cancel out. So then I've got V squared minus 2AS, all underneath the square root, is equal to U. Okay. Now remember that square, this square and square root do not cancel out, because I'm not trying to really eliminate anything here. I'm just trying to show the inverse properties all the way through. Okay, so my answer here would be U is equal to negative 2AS plus V squared, or you could also write it as U equals V squared minus 2AS. Okay, as long as we notice this V squared is a positive, even if we don't write it there. All right, so that is it. So when I look at it tomorrow, your vowels should be completed in your name. If you have any questions, send me a remind. If my name was A-E-I-O-U and I'm looking at this, I should be able to see A-E-I-O-U and J. If that was my name, I should be able to find it right there. All right, I will see you all later.